start with a candle and a feather to follow tradition, and then in order to actually find things, I suggest switching to a flashlight and the lights, right? And make sure that you don't check with your candle next to any drapery for chametz, okay? Otherwise, we might have an early burning of the chametz, chas v'shalom, along with other things, which we certainly don't want to have, okay? So let's all exercise caution in that respect. But tonight is the checking of the chametz. We make the blessing before, and it's all in the art. It's all in the email that I sent, all in the art scroll, right? And we make the proclamation tonight, rendering ownerless any chametz that we are not aware of. That which we are aware of, we don't want to make that ownerless. We want to retain ownership. A, to maybe eat some of it the next morning, and from a halachic point of view, B, to make sure that when we burn the chametz, we're fulfilling the mitzvah of burning our chametz. If we've rendered it ownerless, then it's no longer ours to burn. By Friday morning, I believe 10:14 is the last time that a person can eat any chametz. Now, even though we think Pesach is the time you can't eat chametz, actually, according to the Torah law, from midday already on Friday, which is the time that the Paschal sacrifice, the Korban Pesach, would have been brought, from that point already, min ha-Torah, based on Torah law, one is not allowed to eat any chametz. Rabbinically, we move it back 2 hours, right? And 2 hours means 2 halachic hours. It means 2/12 of the day. We bring it back before the halachic midday, and we stop eating 2 hours before 10:14. We complete burning an hour before, which is 11:20 something, 11:27, I believe. Okay, we will have a fire pit set up here at the shul tomorrow to burn the chametz. I strongly urge, don't come with a garbage bag filled with all of the trash. Rather, isolate your chametz. And I also would urge, if you do have a significant amount of chametz, like if you, like myself, pretty, not too smartly, bought 2 big packs of pita last night, thinking a lot of people in the house, but virtually none of it got eaten, right? So as opposed to trying to burn all of that chametz, which will be very difficult, and as opposed to putting it into your trash, which I know for me was picked up today. Is that the whole area over here? Basil, when's your trash picked up? Yeah. Okay, so those who, like me, the trash was picked up today, you don't want to leave it in your trash until next Wednesday. So what I would like to suggest doing is, just turn it off for 1 second, please. So of course you'll burn your chametz in a very legal fashion. Okay. Now, moving ahead, after you finish burning the chametz, so then there is the second kol chamir v'chamir, the second declaration that we make. We say it in Aramaic. Say it in Aramaic, also say it in English to make sure you know what you're saying. At that point, you are rendering ownerless any chametz that you have. Now, that is which has already been sold is not an issue. But any chametz that you might have lying around that you were unaware of, at that point, it is no longer yours. Okay? Throughout Pesach, we don't own any chametz. It's not a problem seeing someone else's chametz. If you're going shopping in Wholesome Choice in order to get some fruits and vegetables, things like that, then it's no problem if you see their bread that they're making over there. Don't lust after it, but you can see the bread that they're making there. The problem is not seeing that which belongs to you. Okay? Milk products. Well, not milk products. Milk. If one is not buying or does not find OUP or kosher, specifically milk that is kosher for Pesach, one can buy the milk before Pesach and use regular milk, regular kosher milk, right? Use it on Pesach. That includes the lactate milk, whether it's the lactate brand or the house brands of lactate milk. Right, so cheeses, whether it's hard cheese, whether it is butter, whether it is cottage cheese, cream cheese, all of that needs specific Pesach certification. We got a lot of Philadelphia brand cream cheese with an OUP. We got it in Target. Right? They had it all mixed up with the other ones, so we just dug out the ones that had the OUP and saved quite a bit of money in doing that. So all the cheeses need to be bought. It needs to be kosher lePesach. Milk, if it's not kosher lePesach, if it's just kosher, then one can buy it only before Pesach. And even those who don't normally drink the lactate milk, it might be an idea to buy some of those containers for Pesach because they last longer than the regular milk, and until you open it, you don't really have a concern of it going bad. So that gives you, if you're concerned about buying milk on Friday, it needs to last you through next Shabbos, so then the lactate milk might be an idea in terms of that. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to run through the Pesach Seder right now and touch on some different points as we go along, and hopefully this will be, in addition to a good refresher for myself, it'll also be a good primer for those who will be having their own Sedarim. Okay, we begin our Seder. Well, what does Seder mean? Order. So Seder means order, and we begin our Seder by singing the Seder, by singing, or at least stating, the order of the 15 steps that we go through as part of our Seder. Now, why has this gotten the name of a Seder? Why is the Seder, why is the order so important? And explanations are given, and the explanation that I like, that I most often share, is the idea that Pesach teaches us that there are no haphazard events that take place in the world. There is no coincidence. I think Dove is the one who told me coincidence is actually ka, which is one of God's names, incidents. Okay? So every incident that takes place is not a coincidence, it is ka incident. It is God's involvement. So we need to recognize there is a Seder to life. There is a Seder to the world. There's a Seder, there's an order to the world events. And even when it seems that these events are spiraling out of control, certainly beyond what God would want, so then what one needs to focus on most clearly is the event of the slavery in Egypt, which went on for over 200 years. And yet that was part of the Seder. That was part of the master plan, part of the birth of the Jewish people. And throughout time, as I'll be speaking a little bit on Pesach also at some of the speaking slots, right, we'll see how in the most unbelievable of situations, the Geula, redemption, has followed. So we begin with the order of the Seder, and of course the very first thing we do is the Kadesh. Number one on our list is the Kadesh. Kadesh is the Kiddush, and this Pesach, being that it is Friday night, so we have the Friday night, and then we have the Yom Tov Kiddush, and of course we also have the Shehechianu, that we have reached this point. Afterwards we drink, and we drink when we are leaning. Leaning is a show of royalty, is a show of kingdom, of freedom, of what we reached. And therefore, whenever we do the things which represent freedom, we lean. That includes the wine. That includes the matzah. That does not include the karpas that we'll soon discuss, that gets dipped into the salt water to remind us of the tears. And it does not include, of course, the maror, the bitter herbs, which remind us of the bitter slavery. Okay, so that is number one, the Kadesh. Afterwards, we have Orchatz. Orchatz is where we wash our hands. We wash Netilat Yadayim. We wash our hands, we do it without a bracha. And there are different customs. In some homes, everybody washes. In other homes, just the person leading the Seder is the one who washes. We don't normally wash when we're having vegetables. We only wash now. The times we wash our hands are we wash our hands in the morning. Netilat yadayim, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is done with a bracha after the washing. And we wash our hands before davening, mincha and marav, without a bracha. And when it comes to food, we wash our hands 1, 2, 1, 2 before eating bread. And that's done with a bracha. Now, in the time, and the reason we're doing that really is as a zecher to remember how the eating was done in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, how the truma, etc., was eaten. And then we don't want to forget that, therefore we stay in tune, attuned to that with our own washing. They also used to wash when they would have vegetables, especially when they were dipped in water. We don't, but as a remembrance for that, and there are certain shitos, certain opinions that say that we do, even nowadays, we don't rule like that lahalacha, but nevertheless by the Seder, at least the Baal Habayit does wash his hands before he comes to number 3 on our list, which is the karpas. The karpas is a vegetable other than maror. The Gemara goes into a long discussion. What is done if one only has the same vegetable to use for both? In our affluent society, that is not an issue. So we use a vegetable different than the maror. We make a blessing, Borei Pri Ha'adama. We have in mind with that blessing that this Borei Pri Ha'adama, blessing God for the fruits of the earth, will also count for the moror we're going to have later. We dip that into salt water. We take a small amount in order to not necessitate an after blessing, which would then interrupt between that eating and the eating of the moror later on. It is dipped into the salt water as a remembrance of the tears. Okay, and this is our first dip. Now, interestingly, I think the Ben Ish Chai says that the 2 dips that we do on Pesach remind us of 2 dips of our history. One dip, the first dip, is a very tragic dip. That was the dipping of Joseph's coat into the blood of the goat in order to deceive Jacob, their father Yaakov, thinking that Yosef, his son, was dead. That is a dipping of sinat chinam, of animosity, of jealousy, of rivalry. That was corrected by the second dip. The second dip was by the Korban Pesach at the time of our redemption. And the Korban Pesach is families getting together. Everyone is doing it together. There is that unity. We dip in agudah, right, which is a good, right, which is a bundle of things that are tied together, understanding that we as a nation are all tied together. And it was that unity. And Korban Pesach again is a goat, the same goat. Not the same goat, but you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. The same goat which they dipped Joseph's coat into for the blood, we take a goat and we join together, and that's what led to our redemption. So this first dipping is a tragic dipping, and it's into the salt water, reminding us of the tears that led up to the redemption.
The karpas is usually the parsley. We use parsley?
You can use parsley, some people use celery. Yes, yes. Okay. After that, we get to yachatz. Yachatz is where we break the middle matzah in 2. And we take the larger part and put that away. That will be eaten for the afikomen. That's the dessert that's eaten at the end. And the first one, the smaller broken half, will be eaten when we get to the motzi matzah. We make hamotzi, and we make 2 blessings at that point. We'll come to in a little bit. We make the hamotzi, and we make the alachilat matzah, It's bread, it's the bread of Pesach, so we make hamotzi before eating it. But in addition to that, we have the specific command to eat matzah. And therefore we make the bracha, the blessing, Asher Kiddishanu B'Mitzvotav, we've been sanctified with the mitzvot, with the commandments, V'tzivanu, and been commanded, al achilat matzah, on the eating of the matzah. Now this yachatz actually really sets the tone. It's not just, taking care of this technical issue, we need half now, half later. This really sets the tone. The reason why we're breaking it is that this is the lechem oni. Matzah is referred to as lechem oni, the bread of affliction, the bread of oppression. It is the broken bread, the broken lechem that we ate during our slavery. But in Judaism, the day begins with the night, it's night, and then day. It starts with light, life is with darkness, and then there is light. There is always the Yeshua, the redemption that is up above. Olam Hazeh, this temporal world, is compared to night, and Olam Haba, the world to come, is compared to day. So we have night, we have day. We have Olam Hazeh, we have Olam Haba. We eat first the broken matzah, which is the bread of affliction, and then that's the smaller piece. The larger piece is put aside for the afikomen. The afikomen we eat as a remembrance. So the half that we eat when we come to the matzah, that is to remember the bread of affliction. However, the second half that we eat, the larger half, that is zecher to the Korban Pesach, as a remembrance of the Paschal sacrifice. That needs to be eaten al hasova. One needs to be full when eating that. They wouldn't eat the Korban Pesach as being famished. Oh, let me have that. If there was not a lot of meat to go around, then they would bring a Korban Chagiga, another sacrifice, to provide even more meat. So be sure that when they eat the Korban Pesach, they are sated. Sated is the idea of Olam Haba, the world to come, where we are no longer wanting, no longer in need, and hopefully we have filled up our life with meaning, with accomplishment, and therefore we are sated at that point. So this yachatz really exemplifies the whole Jewish view on life and life, right? Not life and death, but the different stages of life. Death actually is referred to as the Gesher HaChayim, the bridge of life, the bridge through which we connect from one stage of life to the next stage of life. So Yachatz really sets the tone as we go into the Seder. Magid. Okay, number 5 on our list is Magid, and this is the mitzvah. This is one of the mitzvot of the Seder. Certainly the matzah is a mitzvah in Torah. Maror is a rabbinic mitzvah nowadays, even though maror is mentioned in the Torah. Maror the herbs are only mentioned in the Torah in the context of eating it together with the Korban Pesach, with the Paschal sacrifice. Now that we don't have the Paschal sacrifice, the maror is only midrabanan. It's of a rabbinic nature. The matzah is mentioned both in the context of the Korban Pesach and as a standalone commandment. Therefore, matzah nowadays is min HaTorah, is a Torah mitzvah. The maror is a rabbinic mitzvah. However, Magid, V'higadet lebincha, you should tell your children. Magid, the telling of the story of the Haggadah, is a mitzvah min HaTorah. And we begin our Magid with the declaration, this is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, come and eat. Whoever needs, come and join the Pesach. Now we are here. The next year we will be in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves. Next year we will be free men. Okay? And now we are slaves. Isn't the whole Haggadah about our emancipation, about our liberation? Yes, but things go in stages. And that was a colossal step forward. But nevertheless, we are still somewhat enslaved. Thankfully, we here in America are not enslaved in a physical sense in any way, but certain ways we are enslaved to society. we are enslaved to style, we are enslaved to what others will say and think, and that certainly affects us. Okay. The Seder plate is removed, the second of the 4 cups are poured, and then as we remove the Seder plate, right, we start to clear off the table. The kids say, hey, we haven't eaten yet. Why are we clearing off the table? And that sets the stage for the Ma Nishtana. Why is this night different than all the nights? And we have the 4 kashas, the 4 questions that are asked. And at their core, right, the first one is only matzah, not chametz. Second one is bitter herbs. The third one is dipping twice. And the fourth one is our leaning. At the root of these 4 questions is, I've written about it as one of the newsletters recently, is the inherent contradiction of this night. That we're doing contradictory things. We are accustomed to happy days, we are accustomed to serious days, we are accustomed to sad mourning days, we have our holidays of happiness, we have our high holidays of days of serious, days of awe, we have Tisha B'Av, we have the other fast days which are days of mourning, days of sadness. Pesach is this strange mixture of both things that show slavery, that's the matzah and the maror, and things which show royalty, freedom, which is the dipping and that is the leaning. Therefore the question is, at the core, why is tonight a night of contradictions? And the answer is, Avadim hayinu leparo b'mitzrayim. The answer is because this was a night which had these 2 contradictory states, these 2 contradictions in one. We were enslaved to Paro and Mitzrayim, and God took us out on that night. Now, did we leave at night?
No.
We did not leave at night. We were not going to leave, as we say, like thieves in the night. But came midnight, came Makat Bechorot, came the plague of the firstborn. At that point, they wanted us out. We were free to go, but we would go when we were ready, not running out in the middle of the night. But that is the idea of Avadim Hayinu. That is the answer at its core to the question. And had God not taken us out, we would still have been enslaved to a certain degree. At least to this mentality of the Paro in Mitzrayim. Right? The freedom was, my existence is not for the sake of those who are over me, for those who control me. My existence is for my sake. Every person needs to say, Bishvili, for my sake the world was created. That is not an egotistical approach. It is one that gives a tremendous sense of responsibility to everyone to know that they must accomplish. And then we say, even if we're all wise, understanding Zikanim, we all have the obligation to tell about Yetziat Mitzrayim. This is not meant to be an intellectual experience. The Seder is meant to be an experiential experience. I know that's a little bit redundant. Okay, it's meant to be experiential. Okay, and therefore we feel it, we do it, we act it, and we don't just speak about it. And we see the greatest of sages were there, and they were there the whole night until it was time for the Shema. Okay, we speak about the 4 sons. That is based on there are 4 different mentions in the Torah of what you should tell your children, of telling the children. So we say that aligns to the 4 different sons. And the idea here, well, it's interesting. We say, Baruch HaMakom, blessed is the omnipresent, Baruch Hu, blessed is He. Blessed is one who gave the Torah to the nation Israel, blessed is He. We mentioned blessed 4 times, then we introduced the 4 sons, right? The wise, the evil, the simple, and the one who's unable to ask. Every single one is a bracha. And we can learn a tremendous amount, and hopefully we need to try to specialize our message to each of our children to make it impactful for them. We then say, Baruch Shem Avtachaso, blessed is the one who kept his pledge to Israel. And that's a famous question that's asked there. Why are we saying, oh, blessed is God that he kept his pledge to Israel? We expect everyone to keep their word. We won't think that this is, oh, let me praise God because God kept his word. We expect everyone to be keeping their word. But the emphasis here is not that he kept his word to Israel, but rather that he kept his word to Israel. Meaning that the pledge of the slavery and the ultimate Torah being given, we're happy that came to us. That we understand Hazorim Bedima Barina Yiksaru, those who plant with seed, with tears, then with song they harvest. So we're happy that we went through this experience, understanding that it was a transformational experience. And we say, Vihi Shanal Vaseinu, and that is what has stood for our fathers and for us, that Haftacha, that guarantee, that not just one person has come to destroy us, but in every generation they come to destroy us, and God saves us from their hand. And throughout history, the very fact that we're here discussing this, that tomorrow night, Bezrat Hashem, we will be having our Pesach Seder, and the Pesach Seder that is the, certainly, maybe we could argue Yom Kippur, but I think the holiday that most Jews are involved with, regardless of their degree of affiliation and religious observance, right? Pesach is certainly up there. Then we go into the different psukim, the different verses that speak about the Exodus from Egypt. Now, it would make sense if we're going to be shining a spotlight and magnifying these different verses of our Exodus, we would imagine, where should these verses be drawn from? The book of Exodus. Right? That would make sense. But it's not. It's not at all. We are in Deuteronomy. We are in Devarim. And we are focusing on these verses that a person would say when they would bring the first fruits from their fields in Israel to the Beit HaMikdash. And in there we mention, right, they tried to destroy us. He went down to Egypt. Our father went down to Egypt, became a great nation, right? And then they did evil. They afflicted us, hard labor. We cried out to Hashem. Hashem heard us. And Hashem brought us out with an outstretched arm, etc., etc. Why are we shining the spotlight on Devarim, on the Bikurim, on the first fruits? What does that have to do with anything? If this is the night of the Exodus, the verses we should be focusing on should be from the book of Genesis. No, I'm kidding. From the book of Exodus, of course. Right? This is the Exodus. We focus on the book of Exodus. And there are a number of answers that are given. The two that speak most to me is that the mitzvah of Bikurim, and they really are tied one to the other. The mitzvah of Bikurim is the mitzvah of thanks. Okay, and tonight, the Seder night is meant to be a night of gratitude, of appreciation, of all that Hashem has done for us as a people and for us as individuals. Secondly, it's not meant to be a history lesson of what happened then. It needs to be presented as, and then what? Therefore, we're bringing the psukim that after the Exodus, we're now in Israel. And we're bringing the fruits of the land of Israel. So it's not the history lesson of what happened then. It is the lesson of how that affects me, where we are now. That is what brought us to the point of being redeemed, being a nation in Israel. And certainly our generation, where we have returned to the land of Israel and have sovereignty in our land. We certainly have experienced in our lifetime that continuing saga on that and those steps that are bringing us closer and closer and closer to the ultimate redemption. So it's then those psukim that we focus on and that we go through. And we end up quoting from the Navi in Yoel. Oh, too bad. right? We're learning Yoel in our Monday night class, and we stopped after chapter 2, and we'll continue with chapter 3 after Pesach. This Monday night we won't be studying, and this pasuk is from Yoel 3, which speaks about the Dam, the Eish, and the Timrot Ashan. That in the ultimate war, there's going to be blood and fire, and it's translated as columns of smoke. And something that I always share at the Seder that strikes me, tamar is not a column. What is a tamar?
A date?
A date or a palm tree, a date tree or a palm tree. Right? So we're talking about Timrot Ashan, palm trees of smoke.
Yeah.
Right? We don't call it palm trees of smoke, we call it a mushroom cloud, which is the same shape as a palm tree of smoke. It goes up straight, and then it palm trees, or we say it mushrooms. So it's fascinating to note that the Navi, Yoel, in the time of the son of Achav, right? When he's talking a prophecy about the ultimate end, the smoke that accompanies the fire and the blood, he describes it as Timrot Ashan, as this mushroom cloud. Then, of course, we get to where we mention the plagues, and traditionally we drop off a little bit of wine as we say each of these plagues. The reason why we're dropping off some wine is to understand, to recognize that every single human being is a child of God. And it was necessary that these plagues be brought upon the Egyptians, but nevertheless, it is tragic. And that is not the ultimate. The ultimate is, as we say in Aleinu, when the entire world will recognize God and serve Him. Okay? Therefore, we drop out a little bit by each of the names of the plagues, and also when we have Rabbi Yehuda's abbreviated version of the first 3, middle 3, and last 3, and it's not simply a memory aid, but each one, if you'll take out a few minutes before Pesach to look there it is in Shmos and Exodus, you'll see that they're grouped together in 3 categories. Each one was meant to teach a different lesson. The first 3 was that I am Hashem, and it attacked their God. Their God was the Nile. Right? And also it was something that their magicians could not replicate. The middle 3 was I am God in the midst of the land. And those were all things that normally spread about indiscriminately, and yet there it was very, very precise where each were hit. And lastly, it was Ein Kamoni Ba'aretz. There is none like me in the land. Right? The first of the last group was the Barad, was the hail. And the hail was a combination of fire and water. In the polytheistic world, that doesn't happen. Either the fire god wins or the water god wins. But there are no truces that go on. And this was clearly showing that the domination of God is something completely beyond the system. It's not a force that's within the system. It is a force that is completely beyond this system. And we mentioned a number of times that in different classes, in different contexts, this is a good point to bring up at your Seders, that whenever science says, science tries to prove the existence or the non-existence of God, something that's within a system cannot prove or disprove something that is beyond the system. It's the fish in the tank saying, I understand this tank really well. Clearly, I haven't found anyone who made this tank, and he's right. Whoever made the tank, hopefully, is not in there with the fish to be discovered. Or I always like to quote
the Monopoly.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank now. Rabbi David Foreman. Thank you. Right, David Foreman. Right, who jokes that shoe says to iron, as he passes go and collects 200, do you believe in Parker? I don't believe in Parker. I see the name Parker written over here, Parker Brothers, but I've been around this board, I've parked everywhere, I've built hotels, houses, been to jail, gotten out of jail, free parking, railroads, utilities. I know this board backwards and forwards. I've never met Parker. Okay? And that's the idea that when you're within a system, you're not going to find something which is beyond the system. And the Makot were meant to show that God is beyond the system. I remember I was sitting here, of course, in Orange County, at a rabbi's meeting. Right? Orange County rabbi's meeting. The males are all in the minority, right? And someone presented that they could prove that God doesn't exist.
At a rabbi's?
Right? Yeah. They could prove that God doesn't exist. Right? Because science has taken care of, has explained everything that goes on in this world.
No.
Now, obviously, that's not a proof that God doesn't exist, but all that's saying, which is true, is that from phenomenon that go on in the world, we can't prove that God does exist, but it certainly does not prove that God does not exist. And our belief is that God is the one who set all of this into motion and who governs it. Okay. We then move on to the Dayenu, which some of you might be saying right now, hopefully not. Right? Dayenu is enough. Right? And the whole Dayenu is very, very strange. Right? Had God brought us to Har Sinai, but not given us the Torah, it would have been enough. What does it mean it would have been enough? Right? But the understanding, the general understanding is it would have been enough for us to have this sense of gratitude. Not that it would have enough to be there without the Torah, enough to not gotten the Torah, not have received Shabbos, but it would have been enough for us to be in a debt of gratitude. And then after the whole Dayenu, we repeat everything again, because there are always these different levels of understanding and therefore appreciation. Those who might have not been saying the entire Haggadah, well, Rabbi Gamliel says if you don't say these three things, you have not fulfilled your mitzvah. And that is the Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Pesach is reference to the Paschal sacrifice. Matzah is that we eat matzah. There was not enough time, and actually the second night of Pesach I'm going to be discussing why the emphasis on there not having been enough time. Why is that an important theme here? And of course the maror, the bitter herbs. Now, order-wise, we would have thought, don't make maror the last one. Don't make maror the last one. Maror was the bitterness which then led to geula, that led to matzah, and that led to Pesach. But the order is very strange. We start with Pesach, which is deliverance, then we have matzah, and then we have maror. Something to think about, and bring up a conversation at your Seder, why that might be.
But I have a solution with that.
I know, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
No, the solution that
Yeah.
you could do is start at the bitter end, the stalk, and work your way to the better end.
But the last one is maror, I'm saying.
Yeah, that's more right.
In other words, if you have the romaine, you start at the bitter portion of the romaine and eat out to the less bitter leaf.
Okay. That's an interesting idea. We end off this with V'chol dor v'dor. Every generation, a person must see themselves as if they have left Mitzrayim. We need to understand that we are a link in this. An explanation that I've often given is from Rabbi Schwab, a very beautiful explanation. How can it be that I can see myself as if I left Mitzrayim? I was never in Egypt. I was never in Egypt, not even for a stopover. Right? So how am I supposed to feel that it's as if I left Egypt? But he says very interestingly that when you look at a baby picture, right? Right? You look at yourself when you were young, what do you say? That was me. Now, what are you seeing over there? You're seeing your skin cells, right? Are those skin cells still here? Long gone. Actually, most of the cells of your body that are in that picture, besides the one that you see, but even that person you see in the picture, most of the cells have died. right? Maybe a few brain cells are still around, right? Diminishing at a certain point in life, right? But the vast majority of the billions upon billions of cells are no longer you. They have died, they've been replaced. Yet you say, that's me, right? Because even though the cells have been replaced, being that it's the same body, that is me. Ray Schwab says that we, the nation of Israel, we are like a body. And a generation passes, those cells die, and they are replaced by new cells. And then those cells die, they're replaced by new cells. And we are the new cells that are on the body right now. And we look back at this picture that we have here of the Exodus, and we say, that was me. I think it's a very, very beautiful parable. And with that, we start to say the Hallel. We start to say the Hallel, the Psalms of praise, and then we get to a certain point there, and then we move on now to the second cup, and we make not a Kiddush, but we have a blessing of that God has redeemed us, Ga'al Yisroel. We make Bori Pri Agafen, we drink the second cup, and then we lean. With that, we have, for the most part, completed the Magid. There'll be some more after this, but in essence, we have completed the mitzvah of Magid, of telling the story of the Haggadah, and now we move on to the other mitzvot. We have Rachza, where we all wash our hands as we would on any Friday night, and any meal we're having bread. We all wash our hands, we all make Netilat Yadayim, then we make the two blessings, Hamotzi Lechem and Aris. We do that holding all three of the matzot. We want to have Lechem Mishnah, and then we drop the bottom one, and then we make the bracha of alachilat matzah, and then we eat, ideally, 2 kazaitim of matzah, at least 1 kazayit, but ideally, we should be eating 2 kazaitim of matzah. A kazayit is an olive size. You think, no problem. Little do you realize that an olive size means of compressed. And basically a zayit, and they were larger in those days. So a zayit, let's say if you're using the machine matzahs, it's a half of a sheet. So we'll be eating almost basically a whole matzah. If you're using the hand matzot, then it's about a third of that hand matzah. So in this case, it would be 2/3 of that hand matzah. The night of Pesach, we must eat shmura matzah. It doesn't need to be the hand shmura matzah. There also is machine shmura matzah. But shmura matzah means matzah that was watched from the time of the harvesting until that it was under scrutiny. So for the nights of the Seder, we need to have shmura matzah. We then eat our matzah, we eat the matzah, and of course we lean for the matzah. Afterwards we have, again, a kazayit of maror. The maror is the romaine lettuce. Now last year in Albertsons they had a certain romaine lettuce that came with a hechsher that it was checked for bugs. The romaine, I was in Albertsons, I've been checking almost on a daily basis. They have that brand without that stamp, which means that you need to be careful to check the romaine lettuce for bugs, okay? Otherwise, we don't want to be eating bugs. Not on a health level, not on a Jewish kashrut level. We then make the blessing of alachilat maror, eating the maror. We eat the maror without leaning. Then we have our sandwich. Hillel was famous for making sandwiches. I doubt this was a big hit in his house if he made the sandwiches for the kids for lunch. But Korach he would fold together the matzah and the maror and eat them together. So we do that zecher. And once it's another kazayit of each, right? And then we lean as we eat that. And the maror I didn't mention, but that's the second dipping. The maror is dipped into the charoset. It's not meant to be a charoset sandwich. It's dipped in and then shaken off. Charoset is delicious. Enjoy that during the meal, but don't pack it onto your maror. And it's interesting from the Ben Ish Chai that I mentioned earlier, the second dipping is a sweeter dipping. The first dipping was into the salt water. The second dipping is into the sweet charoset, and those are the two dippings, the first tragic dipping, and then the dipping which served as the correction, as the tikkun for that first dipping, and we have the korach. At that point, we go into Shulchan Aruch, and we have a lavish, delicious Pesach meal fit for kings and queens, which is what we are.
So speaking of that, is fish, I know the minchag is for meat, but if there's a particularly nice fish, since fish is now more of a, it's common and available at stores, but it's also more of a rarity, you know, like it's a farm raised, is it okay?
Usually we have basar, we have meat at these very festive sudas.
We had some.
There's no halacha against someone having
So
fish.
if we had like a chicken stock matzo ball soup, that would fulfill it? And
Usually, usually we have meat, right, or fowl, at these meals. Okay, one can certainly fulfill their mitzvah of the Pesach Seder if they have fish. Okay, then tzafun. Tzafun is now as much matzah and maror that we've eaten already, and then we've had a whole meal, right? Though over the years we've learned to sort of stop, cut back, and then many have a custom to have an egg and salt water. So we go from that. We don't have another first course after that. We figure that's enough of a first course. And we usually go to the soup and then the main meal. Okay? But you do want to leave some appetite. We mentioned before that the tzafun, the afikomen, that is olam haba. That is when we are sated. But you don't want it to be the point where you can't take another bite, where you are, overflowing. We have the afikomen again. That's a remembrance of the Korban Pesach. And that again is a kazayit. According to some, it should be 2 kazaitim. Okay, and once again, we are leaning left as we eat that.
Rabbi,
and then, yes.
How can you eat a kazayit if you've got like 10, 20 people at your Seder table and you've only got half a matzah?
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So I've got my box that I keep drawing from. Okay, so what I do is I take, let's say, by the hamotzi. So the top one is the hamotzi, and the middle one is the alachilat matzah. I take a little bit from each of those, and then take the requisite amounts and pass it around to everyone. Okay? So therefore, everyone's getting a little bit of those that we actually made the bracha on, right? But everyone's getting the requisite amount of matzah that I keep drawing from the box I have on the side there.
That's
okay.
Like
now, I'm sorry.
It's like hagiga. You're adding it.
Okay. Now, ideally, you want to eat that matzah in a relatively short period of time, between 4 and 9 minutes. Okay, to make it all one eating. Now, one can sip water while you are eating that matzah. That is a tremendous boon to the salivary glands that are working overtime with all that matzah, right? So it makes it a lot easier to eat that matzah and to eat and swallow that matzah within the prescribed period of time.
What about the wine?
So if you have a small table and you did the lechem and then you dropped the third, can you use that to distribute?
The third one is what we use for the sandwich, the Hillel sandwich.
Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't mention that. Thank you. Then we go to Barech, right? Which is benching. The usual benching, the grace after meals that we say. At this point, we've done 13 out of the 15. Okay? After that, we complete the Hallel, and then we have so that's Hallel, and then we have, lastly, we have Nirtzah. And Nirtzah is that we have completed Chasal Seder Pesach Chazal. We've completed the Seder as it was meant to be done, and may it be pleasingly accepted by you, Hashem. Right, our service may be pleasingly accepted. We end off Lishana Haba B'Yerushalayim. At that point, we have a number of very beautiful songs that we sing, and it's very interesting. I just saw a nice idea. I'll mention it over Pesach also. That we started off the Seder with the questions, the Manish Tana Laila Zeh, and we end off with Echad Mi Yodea, who knows one, who knows two, right? So now, after they started off that they asked the Baal HaSeder the questions. Now we want to make sure we've learned something. So what does a good teacher do? Right? Then asks the questions. Right? Who knows one? Who knows two? Who knows three? Who knows what all of these things represent as we move forward? And that is the Seder. Now I know if I could do the Seder that fast, a night of Pesach, I would be a very popular person, but it doesn't quite work out that
We
way.
could eat during the Seder.
That's true, that's true. But then again, you got to eat sandwiches during the Seder this day, so no one can complain.
So that gets to my, after Shulchan, I guess there's this postprandial slump.
It's a little bit late. Let's end now.
Okay.
We have to take any questions. I think I just don't want to keep everyone hostage. People
Sorry.
have busy days.
Chag Sameach.
Those who are going to bench, right, please get together and bench. Yes.